What is up, everybody? Happy game day. Welcome into this pregame edition of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You, of course, can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Really excited that it's game day. Excited for Packers Lions. This should be a really fun one. These are the ones that you circle on the calendar, you look forward to, and you just know it's going to be a really tough battle. It's the biggest game of the week, in my opinion, Packers Lions, and is going to have huge ramifications in not only the NFC North, but in the NFC in general. And we're going to start to see, as more and more of these NFC North teams play each other, a little bit more of that cannibalism as they start to kind of eat each other alive. But this is a huge one. And Green Bay, as we've talked about all week, does not want to go 0-2 in the division, starting off with losses against Minnesota and Detroit, both at home. Detroit would love to have a 2-0 start in the division with wins against both Minnesota and Minnesota and Green Bay. And also in the conference, Green Bay does not want to fall to 2-3 in the conference. It's great that they beat the crap out of the AFC South. That's really, really nice. And they picked up 4 wins that way. But when it comes down to playoff tiebreakers at the end of the year, it's going to very much come down to division, conference record, those sort of things. So you don't really want to see this one slip through your fingers. And this is just a really big litmus test too for Green Bay at home, rainy conditions. Can you play a physical enough brand of football? Clearly, Green Bay is going to have some injuries that they're going to have to overcome in this one, whether it be Jair Alexander, Josh Myers. I think both of those are going to be big. Evan Williams. The big news is, of course, that Jordan Love is playing. That's massive, but there's definitely going to be some things they have to overcome, but so does Detroit. No, Aiden Hutchinson is massive. Jamison Williams being out with the suspension. So I don't know that this is, I think if you're Green Bay, if you had to say, in general, we'll trade Jair Alexander, Evan Williams, and Josh Myers, and you can't have all the guys that Detroit has out, specifically Aiden Hutchinson, Jamison Williams. I think you probably take that trade if you're Green Bay, simply based on Aiden Hutchinson alone and his impact on a games. But either way, this should be a fun one. Not to get political at the start here, but if any politician at the end wants to, convince me by being able to turn off injuries on the, no injuries in the NFL, we're going to slide that the slider down to none. That would certainly sway my vote in some capacity. I would love to see all these games played with no injuries, but unfortunately, that is not the way that the world works. Spaceman, we, of course, will get to as many chats as we can. I'll be here for probably about maybe a little less than an hour. We'll get to right before kickoff and then allow everyone to kind of go watch the noon games. And then, we'll get to super chats at the top. We'll get to as many member chats as we can as well. Spaceman, I have an odd confidence for today. It's an interesting one. I'll be totally transparent. I don't have a huge gut feel one way or the other. I'm not leaning one way. It just feels like a game I'm really excited for. I wish there were no injuries. I wish this was played and maybe Green Bay gets the advantage in the rain, but I kind of just wish it was a clean, sunny day and everyone was healthy, just so we could kind of get a real gauge of where these two teams are at. But we're going to, for the most part, get that anyway. Just excited to see who really takes control of this game and if Green Bay can go out and have their best game of the season and get their biggest win of the season. GBP Daily, Rob Westerman, good to see a friend. Feeling pretty good about today with a full week of practice at safety. Bullard is going to bounce back today. I think so too. I think so many times we get these outlier performances kind of stuck in our head and be like, that's who they are as a player. And I don't think that way at all with Javon Bullard. I think last week was a tough week, no question about it. And then I think if you go back and watch the rest of the season on the whole, though, he's had a really nice season, especially for a rookie in his first year. I like what he does. I love the way that he plays, his mentality. He's attacking, he's physical, he plays fast. It's just, those are type of guys that you need on this defense. And I think just the influx of, and I know Evan Williams is out today, but of talent in Evan Williams, Javon Bullard, and Edgerrin Cooper, those three players, maybe Evan Williams outstanding because he plays a pretty damn impressive brand of football. He feels like a veteran out there. But in general, like those are three rookies that are going to make rookie mistakes. They're not always going to be aligned properly. They may take a poor angle here, there, whatever. But the tenacity and the intensity and the intentionality that those three play with, it brings something entirely different to this defense. And obviously playmaking is a huge part of that as well. So I think you live with some of the hiccups and the mistakes along the way with those rookies because they're giving you some really exciting, fun flashes and usually coming up with a big play or two throughout the course of the game. It wouldn't be super surprising to me if we saw Javon Bullard be involved in a turnover in some capacity today. Maybe he gets the pick, maybe he forces a fumble, maybe he scoops and scores one, whatever it might be. Wouldn't be stunned if we saw Javon Bullard make a big play in this game. Maybe a sack fumble coming off the edge, who knows? But I think we could see a nice performance from Bullard today, absolutely. Omer, Green Bay must win time of possession and turnover battle. No stupid penalties. Love no INTs. Time to play like the second half of 2023. Finally, Jacobs and Wilson have to be the two best backs in the field. Stokes best game. Well, that's a lot, Omer. I don't think they need to do all of those things. I think there's going to be some things that don't go perfectly in this game, right? Like Detroit's going to stress you. That's going to happen. They're going to stress you. Green Bay's going to stress Detroit. And I think if you can reduce those self-inflicted wounds and, get some of those big plays that Green Bay has shown the propensity to do both on offense and on defense, you're going to be in this one. And then it's going to come down to just execution. And again, who makes the fatal mistake? And maybe it's Detroit, maybe it's Green Bay, but I don't think, Jacobs and Wilson need to necessarily be better than, Gibbs and Montgomery. I think there's some things that are, can and will go wrong in this game for Green Bay. It's not going to be a picture perfect performance. No alliteration intended on that, but I think that they can go out and play a really great brand of football and take this to Detroit and find a way to win. And that's all it's about. I'm not expecting perfection here, nor do I think they need to be perfect. I think there are going to be things that Detroit takes to Green Bay, and you're going to have to, I think this is a great game, by the way, and this is probably a great place to sort of talk about this. Set expectations going into this one. And Green Bay is going to give up points in this game. I always say, what is your expectation? Because if Detroit goes down and scores 2 touchdowns right away and they're at 14 points and everyone is immediately going to do what? Oh my God, Jeff Hafley's terrible, or bench this guy, cut this guy. We need to trade this. We need to give up everything for a certain player. They're going to put up 20 some points in this game. To me, the Mendoza line's probably around 23, 24 points in this one. They're around 23, 24. That's kind of what I would expect Detroit to score. And that might even be good, right? If it's anything under 24 points, 23 points, I feel pretty good about what Green Bay's defense did against Detroit. Now, if it's over 24, all right, now we can have a conversation. If it's 38, if it's 52, all right, now we can complain a little bit. But let's give the defense a hot second before we start throwing everyone on the trade block and the cut block and everything else and firing everyone, because Detroit's going to score some points. And same thing with Green Bay. This Detroit defense, especially their safeties, they're phenomenal. They're really great on the back end. So there might be some mistakes from Green Bay. It's not going to be perfect. Again, let's let this kind of play out before, again, we start throwing everyone on the cut block again. But just set expectations going in. Know that this is going to be a tough game, and Detroit's going to do some really, really great stuff in this one. And just the question is, can Green Bay do better stuff? And I think they can. I think hopefully they will. And this should be that's why these are really fun matchups. As fun as it would be, for Green Bay just to boat race Detroit 50-0 in this game, we know that that's not going to happen. And a part of enjoying and loving football is the ebb and flow, the balance of it all, the back and forth. From a football standpoint, yeah, we would love, again, Green Bay to just boat race Detroit, but in a way, don't we watch for the drama, the excitement, and wouldn't a 38-35 victory or a 27-24 comeback at the end, whatever it might be, it's a little bit more entertaining and fun. So live a little bit with the things that maybe don't go perfectly, and Green Bay will hopefully find a way in this one. Ice Cold Gaming, go to you as well. Easy for me to say. I lose the mustache and I can't talk anymore. It was the source of my powers. I just have a feeling today is going to be a tough game. It could be. It very well could be. This is a game where Green Bay is going to have to find a way to get after the quarterback, specifically and ideally with a 4-man pass rush, specifically and ideally with their defensive linemen, Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Enigbari, LVN, Carl Brooks, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, TJ Slayton, Colby Wooden, whoever it might be. Those are the guys that are going to need to get home in this game. They haven't done that. They haven't done that well at all. Meanwhile, Detroit's offensive line, very good. And if it's paramount that you stop the run and you get after the quarterback, guess who needs to have a really great day? This Packers defensive line. And again, they haven't really shown the ability to do that game in and game out, or really a ton at all this season. So this is a huge game for this defensive front. It's probably, you can argue the game is in the balance on those front four. I think they are going to have such a huge impact. If they cannot come up with a way to be disruptive and make plays, it is advantage Detroit all day. And if they do go out and disrupt and stop the run and get to Jared Goff, it is very much advantage Green Bay. So, it could be a long day. It could be a tough day. I think this is going to be an entertaining game. I think there's going to be back and forth. I could see Green Bay being down, 20-10 or something like that at some point and having to come back and fight. And they could easily do that. Green Bay sometimes seems to play their best football when they're behind. It wouldn't surprise me if that was something that happened in this game as well. it's going to rain, right? So if so, I feel our run game can come up big today. It is going to rain. It is like almost all day. It's like above 50% chance of rain all throughout the game. And it's been raining here in Green Bay all morning. I don't know if it's raining right now. Doesn't look like it, but it's definitely supposed to rain through the vast majority of the game today. So definitely going to probably be a little bit of a slick field. Going to be, again, trenches are going to be super important, and how Josh Jacobs and Montgomery and Wilson and Gibbs and those guys play in the conditions could go a long way in this one as well. And then clearly goes without saying the quarterbacks too. And drops could be a factor, like all these different things. Wet ball, it just a little bit more mistakes. And the team, again, that makes fewer mistakes in this one is going to have a huge advantage. John, I get this question a lot. The first thing always to look for in these scenarios is when they open the practice window. So once they open the practice window, you have 21 days to bring them back. Neither he nor Luke Musgrave have opened the practice window yet. So we're probably not even talking, in the next couple weeks. My guess is, and my hope is that, once the bye week is over and you've had a couple weeks of rest here, and then, you open the window maybe the next week, and then you've got maybe 2-3 weeks to figure out when you want to activate them after that. But right now, neither of them are even open the 21-day window. And here's the other thing too. People always ask about injuries and are wondering why there's never any updates. If you ask Matt, listen to the press conferences. If anyone asks Matt about injuries, he's very non-descriptive and won't give you an answer. Like, it's basically, if you were a question, if you were a media member and you said, Matt, what's the status on Marshawn Lloyd? It would be, he's progressing, or, we're just taking it a day at a time, and you don't get anything out of it. And he's not going to tell you. And the reason that they do that is because they kind of want to keep it close to the vest, but B is because they don't want to set expectations. If Matt says, yep, Marshawn's going to be back in about 2 to 3 weeks, and then it's 2 to 3 weeks and he's not, then all the questions ensue. Has there been a setback? Why isn't he back yet? And things like that. And every injury is a little bit different, right? So I think they try not to set those expectations, but it's the reason why, the media doesn't ask about it a ton, is because you're not going to get an answer anyway. And when they do ask, they get a very coy, answer that doesn't give you any information. And that's why there's never any real updates on it. So the first thing to look for always is when somebody's on IR like this, wait for that 21-day window. And then usually once they open that 21-day window, within 2 to 3 weeks of that, they'll actually get activated and be put back on the roster. Really need this Packers win after how bad the Badgers looked last night. Thankfully, I did not see any of that Badgers game. I had a bunch of stuff going on yesterday and then went out to dinner, so I did not get to see that. I did get to see a little bits and pieces of the Bucs game, including the final shot by Mitchell. That was not fun, and man, just a awful start to the Bucs season. But thankfully, at least for right now, this is not Bucs a day or any other version of it. This is Pack a Day, and we get to talk about a very, very fun Green Bay Packers team, which is something I get excited to do every single day. Trans Right, it's good to see you, my friend. Anywhere from first in the division to seventh after today. Yeah. In the conference. Oh yeah. First in the division or seventh in the playoff race. Yes. It's a wide ranging set of outcomes based on the performance in this one. For those of us who don't have Twitter, what was your Halloween costume? Bring back mustache Andy. I did not actually post the costume on Twitter. I'll just say it was an adult film star, if you will, with the we got the stash going with it. So it was a fun play on a costume, and it was fun. So that's all it was. Spaceman, this is why the Packers continued practice in that monsoon late last July for moments like this. Man, Spaceman, that's great. But from a completely selfish point of view, boy, do I wish they did not do that. That was brutal. To the point, I couldn't even tweet anything on the phone because it was too wet. It was rough. It was very, very not fun. But we got the great meme of Wes Hodkiewicz out of that, so that was worth it. Green Bay got some good practice in that monsoon. But man, that was probably one of the least favorite moments of covering the team, is just because everyone's just completely soaked. And I'm an idiot and don't really check the forecast, but I even think I kind of looked at it and it was maybe some slight rain, and then it was just insane. So yeah, hopefully that did everything that they needed to prepare. I think they did practice in the rain a little bit this week as well. Keontae, I really think we can move the ball in this defense. Our D just has to get constant pressure, at least a couple turnovers. Go Pack, go. Also, we went over the costume, but Yeah, those are definitely going to be two keys to success. And I do think they can move the ball in Detroit's defense. We saw Tennessee early in the game last week have a lot of success moving the ball with Mason Rudolph and friends. So there's definitely some weaknesses there. I think play action is going to be huge. And I think there are ways to take advantage of this Detroit defense, but you're going to have to do it. You're going to, when you do get those opportunities, you're going to have to take advantage. And then to your point, and as we talked about earlier, you're going to have to find a way to get after Jared Goff, and getting a couple turnovers would go a long way as well. Joe, not having Evan Williams means more Stokes and Quay. I'm already not confident. It doesn't really affect the Quay situation at all. With Evan being out, that's the same no matter what. It does definitely mean more Eric Stokes, and obviously no Jair means more Eric Stokes as well. We're going to basically see, I think, a huge portion of Stokes and Valentine on the outside, Nixon in the slot with Bullard and Williams at safety. I don't know if they really feel comfortable doing anything else. Because that would mean really like Catano Adapo or Zane Anderson at safety to get Bullard in the slot. And I don't think they do that. I don't think they're going to do a ton with Corey Ballantyne. Like, I think he'll be the dime corner, but especially from him coming back from injury, I don't know how much you bake him into the game plan. Kamal Haddon's not going to have a role. So I think your nickel and dime secondaries and base secondaries are basically set. I think the only question that remains of any version of the secondary is who is the base corner opposite of Keyshawn Nixon, who will be one of them. And then is it Stokes or Valentine as the one that's opposite when you go 4-3? I think that's the only question. I think, again, in base, you're probably looking at Nixon with either Stokes or Valentine, and then Bullard and McKinney. In nickel, I expect Nixon with Stokes and Valentine, and then again, Bullard and McKinney. And in dime, I expect Bullard and McKinney at safety with Stokes and Valentine on the outside, and then Nixon and Valentine in the slot. I don't know that there's any other version, again, other than not knowing who's that starter in base opposite of Keyshawn Nixon. I think that's honestly the only question. I think for Catano Adapo to not be active basically the entire year and then all of a sudden give him a big role on defense, that would be pretty surprising. Maybe not impossible, but I'd be surprised. Zane Anderson, same thing. Like, he did get a little playing time last week, so they could maybe do a little Zane Anderson in some dime if they didn't want to go Ballantyne and they wanted to put Bullard in the slot. If they wanted to go any big nickel, I mean, it would basically probably have to be, again, either Zane Anderson or Catano Adapo next to McKinney. I just don't think that they're going to want to go in that direction. Then Green Bay's very much just like the offensive line of getting their best five out on the field. Don't really see Oladapo or Zane Anderson factoring into that. All right, Tyler, thank you for the super chat. Do we make a trade for a corner? Jair always seems hurt. Stokes isn't very good. Valentine is still pretty raw, and Ballantyne is average at best. I think if there is a position that I would like to see upgraded, I think this is the one. I think we see, first of all, who like kind of loses this week and becomes an obvious seller, and then kind of see where you want to go from there. And if there's a corner available that Green Bay could add, that would make some sense. Miami's the one. I talked a little bit about Jalen Ramsey. I don't see that actually coming to fruition, but it's kind of a fun scenario, right? Like, you have in a perfect world, you've got Jair and Ramsey and Evan Williams and Xavier McKinney as your primary defensive backs. And then in nickel, you can either go Ramsey in the slot with Nixon outside, or Nixon in the slot with Ramsey outside, or you can go Bullard in the slot with Williams and McKinney at safety. Like, it just gives you so many mix and match opportunities. Your dime defense is set. Like, you've got everything in that situation. Kendall Fuller could be another one in Miami that could potentially make some sense. So if Miami loses today, I think, maybe you make some phone calls there. Don't let me get your hopes up. I don't think Green Bay's making any sort of major splash play for a Jalen Ramsey or anything like that. I think it would be on the margins. Like a Kendall Fuller, I could see something like that. It just depends on how they overall feel about their depth. And like, these are, you also have to like be ready to say, all right, if we go and get a big time corner or anything that would be a starter, you have to be ready to say, like, you're basically benching anyone probably not named Nixon, Jair, Williams, and McKinney, right? Because I think in that situation, Williams and McKinney are your full-time safeties. Jair, Nixon, and the new corner are probably your full-time corners. And with either Nixon in the slot or the new guy in the slot and Nixon on the outside. So it's going to limit what you get out of Javon Bullard. Like, he's not going to play as much in that situation. You're basically not playing Stokes or Valentine at all. And then Bullard probably comes in dime situations, and that's probably like 5 snaps a game. So, I don't know. Again, I think they'll take a look at it. And I do think one of the things that you mentioned here is very much worth considering, and that is Jair's injury history, because I think at the end of the day, if you told me, and I think we've sort of seen it already, that come playoff time, Jair and Nixon on the outside with Bullard in the slot, with Williams and McKinney at safety, you can win with that defensive backfield. I really believe so. And then you bring in, like, I think you maybe get a little bit more creative where I think, I don't know. I think you just maybe, I guess, do Valentine on the outside then in dime, but like dime's not that big of a deal. You're talking about 3, 4, 5 snaps per game in very obvious passing situations. So I'm less concerned about that. I think you can easily, again, win with that group. I think the bigger thing to your point is with Jair's injury history, if you go into the playoffs and there's no Jair, it just feels extremely daunting. I just don't have that level of faith on Valentine and Stokes as being your primary corners in a full game, which we're going to see today. Now, maybe they go and ball out today against Detroit. That'd be awesome. That'd be really, really cool. And I'd love to see it. And if so, that probably gives Green Bay a lot more faith. And in fact, it's a kind of a great way to look at it. Like they're going to find out today in a very large way of can they get away with Valentine and Stokes as their, sort of their outside corners, because we're going to see a ton of them. And Nixon, are these three good enough? Can you count on them? Like this is your challenge. And I think today is, again, the test of if they cannot, if Detroit, who, by the way, has like one really good receiver, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown. The others are fine. It's not like they're just stacked. It's not like it's Jefferson and Addison or something. Like it's Amon-Ra St. Brown and then some guys. And if they in the secondary cannot win against Detroit without Jair, then I think you really have to make that consideration of, all right, we have to be prepared if Jair is not healthy for the playoffs. And then I think you do have to make a move there and just get a little bit of an upgrade that you feel a little bit more confident if that situation would come to fruition. And like, I think if you do add somebody there, I just think it gives you more options in the secondary. That's one of the things that Goody has done such a phenomenal job with, is giving both his offense and his defense different options and play styles that you can play with dependent upon your opponent. If you would go out and get another really good corner that can play maybe in the slot or on the outside, just gives you more options with ways that you can defend certain opponents. And I mean, how much would you love to have, like if Green Bay had already made that trade, right, for a Kendall Fuller or a Jalen Ramsey or just even a good corner, right, whoever it might be, like how much more confident would you feel going into this game that you have that player to go against Amon-Ra St. Brown rather than having to go with Stokes, who struggled all year long, or Carrington Valentine, who's just at this point extremely unproven. So if there is one position that I do think makes a lot of sense, I do think corner is probably the one that I look at a little bit more. All right. Chris, all running today, wet and sloppy field, go Jacobs. I hope he has an awesome day. I mean, and what a great game to come off of, right? Like he was dominant in the second half of last week and put the game on his back. And I think, I think just kind of getting that feel and like reminding everyone, yeah, I'm still that dude. And for him, just to kind of get that confidence in Green Bay, because he knew he could do it with the Raiders, right? And it's not like he's had any sort of, like, he's been awesome the entire year so far, but just having that moment. And I think now going into this game, I think he's going to be feeling it again. I think he's going to be excited to get out there. I know he's a little bit beat up, but I think he'll be good to go. And hopefully we see this epic Josh Jacobs game in this one. All right. I do not think Jair plays. I don't. It's not impossible. Not impossible. He's questionable. They did call up Kamal Hadden, which would lead me to believe that one of those corners is not going to be active. There were two that were questionable, both Ballantyne and Jair, but Ballantyne practiced all week and Jair did not. So my guess there would be if there's one of them going down, it's probably Jair that's not going to play in this game. I will say it's possible, right, that Jair and Ballantyne could both go, and they wanted to bring the corner up just to be safe because both of them were on the injury report. So there could be that world in which they just wanted to be a little extra cautious, or like even just in case, right? If all of a sudden they got like to pregame warm up and Jair and Ballantyne both like got into the warm up in pregame and are like, nope, can't go. And if they didn't call up Hadden, now you're literally left with Nixon, Ballantyne, and Stokes, and that's it. You don't have anyone else. So it could have definitely been precaution. And if Jair and Ballantyne can both go, maybe you just have Hadden inactive for this game, but brought him up just in case. There's a possibility there, but my gut tells me probably not, but it's not an impossibility. We don't know that for sure yet. Would think Lloyd will rejoin practice this week if ready physically. Same with Musgrave, who is eligible after today's game. Not sure what you mean with Musgrave eligible after today's game. They have not opened up his 21-day window yet, and they have not opened up Lloyd's either. So again, first up there is opening up the 21-day window. Time to take the North, lose today. That dream ends. I don't think it's completely done, but it's definitely on life support when you have 2 losses at home to Minnesota and Chicago and are behind both, or sorry, Minnesota and Detroit and are behind both of them in the win-loss column. That's not the way that you want to start, obviously. Not done, game not over, but it would definitely put you back quite a bit at this point. Did you notice Love practicing without the knee brace, or am I tripping? I did not look at it closely enough, Chris. I'd have to look at it a little bit closer. Honestly, I did not look at it. Aaron, Lambeau's Field is going to be messy today. Josh Jacobs goes full Edgar Bennett. Edgar Bennett, Dorsey Levens, some really good mutter days back in the day. I'm all for it. All right. Jaden Reed plus 185 anytime touchdown, locking it in, Billy. All right. I could see that. I could easily see that. Especially too, like the thing that you get with Jaden too, not that this is like super predictable too, but if it's an anytime touchdown, assuming like literally anytime touchdown, the fact that he does get back there at punt returner too does give you a little bit more of like, oh, interesting. If you got like 1 or 2 good blocks here or there, like maybe he could take one to the house. That'd be fun to do in this game. I start every week day at 5 a.m. Guess what my first listen to is every day. Just thought I'd drop a stat of the last 32 games. Jair Alexander has played 16. Your best ability is availability. Yeah, I get that. It sucks. He's a smaller corner. When we hear Goody and friends talk about how like they want their players a certain size, speed, height, everything, sometimes there's reasons for that. And Ron Wolf talks about it. He's like, you make one exception and all of a sudden you end up with a team full of exceptions. And that's in the Packer way. If you like, I can't, again, recommend that book enough for everyone. And listen, I don't put too much stock into injuries and like I understand availability is super important. I have a hard time putting it on the player. Like I think most of them are freak fluke injuries and there's nothing that you can do to really prevent it. You would love to have him out there. I don't blame him. There's nothing that you can do in that situation. It sucks. It's bad luck. It's poor, circumstances, whatever you want to view it as. But I do think that that's going to be something that they have to take a look at. And if a player misses a bunch of time, like, do you want to continue to pump money into that player and sort of set your, expectations accordingly on that player? So I kind of talk about corner being a potential upgrade position at the trade deadline is because you don't want to get caught with your pants down at the end of the season and Jair's hurt again. And yeah, it's been frustrating, but I don't blame the player or anything like that. I think it's just sucky circumstances. And hopefully he can find his way back. Again, we don't even know that he's going to be out today, by the way. It's not 100% certainty, but if he is, hopefully he can find his way back after the bye week and hopefully close the season with playing the rest of the year and be great. That'd be awesome. But it definitely has been an issue with injuries for Jair. And I appreciate you getting up every day and putting on Pack a Day. That's awesome. Appreciate you, Jason. I feel like one that's not being talked about is Xavier versus Goff over the middle. I mean, the beautiful thing about Xavier is it's not just over the middle, right? It could be anywhere. You could be on the left side, the right side, over the top of Amon-Ra St. Brown. He could be guarding Laporta. You don't know where Xavier is going to be on any given play. But yeah, I mean, the safeties in this game. Now, I know Evan Williams isn't playing, but some unbelievable safeties with a huge knack to take away the football. So I think it goes on both sides. The safeties against Jordan Love, the Xavier McKinney versus Jared Goff. There's going to probably be some opportunities. How much do you want to avoid them? And how many plays can those defenders make? And can you get a big play down the field against one of those safeties? Because that's been something these guys have been really good at as well. And then, of course, we talked about Javon Bullard. He's going to have a huge game. So I think safeties will play a huge, huge part in this one. Dennis, I love it. Last time Haddon was elevated from the practice squad was week 4 when both Jair and Valentine were out. Might be a hint that Jair sits. Yeah, we talked about that. I have a question. Is it a little rain or like we saw a few weeks back with the Bears and 49ers, if I'm not mistaken? That I don't know. It sounds like there could be some steady rain, but I'm one thing I cannot fake as I am not a meteorologist. So your guess is as good as mine. Just look at the radar, I guess, and make your best guesstimate. But all I know is it looks like it's supposed to rain. Chris, I think the big thing here is you can't lose the turnover battle. They could tie it. And like if it's 0-0 or 1-1 on each side, I think they're still gonna have a chance in this one. I think losing the turnover battle is a really tough task in this one. If you lose it, you're probably just losing the game. So yeah, I would love to win it. I would love to win it by 3 or 4. But the big thing is you just really cannot lose the turnover battle. Let's hope Riverboat Dan tries a fake punt on his 20 or something. Hey, that's the thing is sometimes you will try that stuff and sometimes it doesn't work out. Hopefully today is one of those days that it doesn't work out. Rodriguez is out along with pass rushers for Detroit. They need to attack the front seven fast and quick. I think so. Their interior is still really good. Like their interior defensive line, Lee McNeil and then DJ Reader, like that's tough sledding on the inside. But I do think from a pass rush standpoint, they're going to be limited to what they can do with those defensive ends. And you've got two phenomenal pass blocking offensive tackles in Rasheed Walker and Zach Tom. Maybe phenomenal is a little strong for Rasheed Walker, but he's still very, very good at it. And I think those two going against defensive ends who are, it's like a complete backup fest. Like Levi Onwuzurike is a good player, but he's kind of a defensive tackle transplant kicking outside. Like James Houston's okay. Like there's just nothing that's really scaring you out there. So if the interior of the offensive line can pick up McNeil and Reader and those guys, it's going to give your offensive tackles those opportunities to win the one-on-ones and should give Jordan a good chunk of time to be able to throw down the field and let those routes develop. But I think that is one of the weaknesses for this Detroit team is their pass rush. Like they're missing a ton of guys, right? Like Marcus Davenport, Pascal, Kaminsky, and of course, Aiden Hutchinson. That is a lot of players on your pass rush to lose in this game. So advantage Green Bay in that regard. Let's see. Chris C, that was my prediction today as well. Another walk-off field goal win, 30-27, I think I said, with a walk-off winner for McManus, third in a row. Excited to see what could potentially be the offensive line of the future. Yeah, very much could be. I think this is a really big game for Jordan Morgan, right? Like I think Elton's going to be more than fine at center, assuming that's the way that they go. I think that's what all of our expectations is. I think Sean Ryan will be good at left guard. I do think that swap from right to left, it's probably not ideal. You'd probably love, those guys to be able to play more their natural positions, but I think that's going to be a big moment for him. And hopefully he's up to it. He's had a lot of opportunity to cross train at center, left guard, and right guard. And then Jordan Morgan stepping in and being the full-time player at right guard. He's been up and down. Like he is not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination. He's going to get some big time matchups with Aleem McNeil and with DJ Reader, maybe a little Levi Onwuzurike kicking in as well. This is going to be a very big day for him. I'm sure they're going to twist and stunt him and try to see if they can confuse him. So big time game for your first round pick. And hopefully he can go out and have really his best performance of the year so far. Preston, thank you for the super chat. I understand the Packers' history and how that wouldn't coincide with trading for a player like Garrett. In your opinion, do you think they should make the move to put them over the top? I don't think it's quite that simple. I have no problem with them making a big time splash play. If they want to go out and trade some, really big time future assets for a big time player, I'm totally fine with that. I don't think that there's any major issue with that. I think where I would look at a little bit more is a lot of times what happens is when these players are being traded, you're usually looking at players that are on a second contract, which means they have a big contract and usually a big cap hit next year and usually the year after that. And you're giving up future draft assets. So what you have to remember here is like the golden goose of how to build a team is super talented players that are on rookie contracts that are well outperforming their contracts. I mean, think of Jaden Reed and all these wide receivers that are making nothing. Tucker Kraft, who's making nothing. Your offensive line, Zach Tom's making nothing. Rasheed Walker's making nothing. Sean Ryan's making nothing. Jordan Morgan's making nothing. Josh Myers is still on his rookie contract. So you've got all those guys making next to nothing. We could go on the defensive side as well. Obviously, there's plenty of guys over there. Edgerrin Cooper is making absolutely nothing. Evan Williams is making nothing. Javon Bullard's making nothing. Like Dontavian Wicks is making nothing. We can go on and on. Like there are so many players that are on young, cheap deals. That's how you build a really great team and allow yourself to go out and spend money on a Josh Jacobs and a Xavier McKinney and keep some of your own big time players, is because you have super talented players on cheap contracts. That's really the key to building out your team and being a really special team. So when you trade away, firsts and seconds and third round picks and a bunch of draft capital, what you're trading away is the opportunity to get those players, is to get those really good players, really talented players that are going to be the core of your team that are on super cheap deals. Those are more valuable than just about anything that you could possibly have. It's why Green Bay emphasizes the draft so much. It's why they are so focused on it. It's why they draft and develop, is because if you can get super talented players on rookie deals, because you get 4 years of them. And all of a sudden, if you put 4 years of those players together where you've done really well in the draft and you've got Carl Brooks and we can go on and on, right? Now, all of a sudden, you've got this team stacked with talent where you have all of these super young players that are not making anything. And then some of those guys you're going to want to pay, some are going to leave, and then you're going to need to restock the cupboard over and over. And I do think there's a risk in trading away a bunch of valuable resources in the future when it comes to that draft capital, because as some of these contracts do come up for Jaden Reed and for, we can go on and on, right? All the young, talented players that are making nothing right now, you're going to have to pay them. And then you're going to need to restock the cupboard, or they're going to leave, and you're going to need to restock the cupboard with those draft assets to continue to build your young team with those players that are making next to nothing. So to give up on that, and then to not only that, but bring in a player that has an exorbitant contract, there is a major swing that takes place there. And you also are putting a ton of assets into one player. Whereas if you go and get that player, look at Amari Cooper this week. Now, they didn't give up a ton of assets there to go get Amari, but they put a decent amount into it. Now Amari Cooper's out this week. And it doesn't seem like it's anything major. He's probably going to be back in a week. But imagine you go out and trade a bunch of future picks for, and give a huge salary to one player, and then all of a sudden he busts his ACL or something, and now all of a sudden all of those assets are gone for one thing, and that ACL, boom, and you're done. And whereas, you might miss on some of those draft picks, but you're saving all the money, but by not having this player on your roster that you can go out and spend eventually, and you're losing all those potential players in the draft. So I know that in the mind, it's like, just trade away, a bunch of your future picks and go out and get Myles Garrett. It could put you over the top. It could, but it could definitely set you back too in the long term, especially when you need to restock that cupboard with some of those players that are going to be young and super talented and hopefully super cheap as well. So you have to look at the entire cost analysis of doing something like that. Now, that being said, if you really truly feel like you're that player away, like we get this player and we're going to win the Super Bowl, then it's worth it, right? Because you don't know what the next 3-4 years are going to bring. You don't know if you're going to have another opportunity to get back to have that opportunity, and they could have that opportunity right now. But there's always that risk. Like the other thing too is like you could put all those eggs in the basket this year, and then Jordan plays today, does something worse to his groin, or does something else by overcompensating for his groin, and he's done for the year, and then it doesn't even matter, right? So, I think you want to be careful with it. I think Green Bay is more often than not taking the approach of get to the playoffs every year and try to get hot at the right time. And more often than not, they unfortunately have not done that. And that's why they have, and nobody's apologizing for it. Nobody should be ashamed by it, but 2 Super Bowls with 3 decades of Hall of Fame quarterback play. And I think there are opportunities where you can go a little bit more all in and say, hey, now is our time. I think Green Bay, specifically with Aaron and in that sort of Ted Thompson range, missed out on a lot of those opportunities. I think there will be those opportunities with Jordan down the line. I'm not sure it's yet. I'm not sure they need to go that far now. I'm not sure that this team couldn't win the Super Bowl as is right now. So that's why I think Goody will be a little bit more cautious with it. And I think, again, if you can get somebody for a 4th or 5th round pick that you think can significantly help this team, or something like that, maybe even a 3rd, yeah, do it. Go ahead. It's not a big deal. You can figure that out. That's no problem, right? And maybe that their salary cap is just this year. Maybe it's a 1-year deal, and maybe it's going to cost you $4 or $5 million on the salary this year. That, again, you have to remember that $4 or $5 million that you use this year, if you didn't use that, you can carry it over into next year and have it for next year's free agency class. But if you can get a player that can help you right now, that's going to cost you $4 or $5 million for the rest of the season, a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick, I think that is a reasonable, compromise to make of like, we're going to give up a little bit of our salary cap. We're going to give up a little bit of a, midday or mid-round pick, 3rd, 4th, or 5th round pick for a guy that can help us now and maybe help us get over the top. I think that's sort of the deal I would be looking for. I'm not necessarily looking for those, 2 first-round picks plus LVN for something or anything like that. But I'll say this one more time, and I've said this a couple of different times when we've talked trade deadline. If we get to Tuesday and Green Bay made some crazy move for Myles Garrett or Max Crosby or something like that, Jalen Ramsey, whoever it might be, not going to be dissing it, not going to be hating it. I'll be just as excited as you guys are. I just temper expectations, don't expect it. And just understand there's very good reasons why Green Bay usually does not make that type of move. And I think usually that's the right decision. And just look back at some of those trades that Green Bay has been involved with in trade deadlines in the past. Do you think Emmanuel Sanders really would have gotten them over the top? I don't think so. Will Fuller certainly would not have. Chase Claypool was one of the biggest blessings in disguises that trade didn't happen. That probably cost you Jaden Reed. And maybe even those trade backs, like they could have gotten that year and a half out of Chase Claypool before they abandoned him, just like Chicago did. And it may have cost them Jaden Reed, Carl Brooks, and Dontavian Wicks in the process. Like that would have, imagine how brutal that would have been if that trade actually went through. And, or imagine if Goody went above and beyond to give the second round pick and something else because he needed to beat out Chicago for that trade. Like that could have been a all-time awful decision at the deadline. So more often than not, these deals that Green Bay has been quote unquote rumored for or whatever, right at the deadline, the best news has been that they haven't made any of those deals. So just be wary. It's always fun to get the new shiny toy. Like I said, if Green Bay does something at the trade deadline, I'm sure for the most part, I'm probably going to be excited about it just like you. But sometimes it is definitely buyer beware, and you have to look at the long-term cost analysis of something like that as well. All right. Jack Smith, man, Christian Gonzalez would be nice about now. He certainly would. Certainly would. Hopefully LVN will be nice down the road when he's ready. Maybe today. Maybe today's the day the light bulb goes off. That will be awesome. We've seen it all the time. The progression is not linear. Sometimes the light bulb goes off for different players at different times. Today would be a good day for it to go off for LVN. That would be very, very nice. And for him to start putting up some pressure numbers because he is very overdue at the moment for something like that. Also think Detroit runs all over us today, 6 yards-ish per. That's the one thing that can't happen. I talked about it on the pregame show today. I think if they have, their 25 carries for 125 yards or something like that, you can survive that. You can survive that. You can't have the, 25 carries for 180, 190 yards. You can't have, or even like 33 carries for 190 because they're able to, run the ball the entire game and stay balanced. That's what you have to be careful of. Can't allow the big runs to Jahmyr Gibbs. Can't allow the consistent 6, 7, 8 yard runs to Montgomery. You're going to have to be really, really sound defensively. And you're going to have to figure out how to kind of pick your poison of when you want to be extra run defense oriented and when you want to be extra pass defense oriented. Not an easy matchup. Not an easy matchup. Jeff Hafley definitely has his plate full today in this game. All right. Where do we leave off here? We don't have to worry about isolating Goff in the run. Finally, a less mobile quarterback. Hope your boys eat. Yeah, I think that's one of the big things is you definitely make, if Jared Goff beats you scrambling around, so be it. That's the one thing you can't take really into consideration, right? You're going to have to be focused on the running backs. You're going to have to be focused on Amon-Ra St. Brown. You've got to get upfield and get Jared Goff off of his spot. So if he scrambles a bunch in this game, so be it. You tip your cap, you live to see another down. But yeah, that, if all of a sudden you get to the end of the game and Jared Goff scrambled 10 times for 130 yards, again, you tip your cap and say, well, we did everything we could. That's the one thing we didn't have the ability to account for. And, I don't see that happening in any real way, right? We will see today if the Morgan over Barton pick was the right one. Oh, Morgan's got a huge game in this one. Again, long-term, telling it's not going to be decided today. Morgan and Barton are going to have long careers in the NFL, and we'll see where they're at in 3-4 years. But it'd be nice if Jordan Morgan could come out and have a really nice game today. Yes, get those cleats right. Very much so. This is why the Packers continued practice in the month. Oh, we talked about that. I know a lot of people dislike him, but huge spot for Quay to make his presence felt today. I hope so. Hope it's a good presence. Green Bay could use a really good Quay game today. All right. Let's go number 52. He's going to have a massive role in this game today. Concerned about the weakness in the corner back room. Hopefully it's not the corner room. Hopefully there's no fatalities back there today. But there's definitely reason to be concerned. This is going to be a big game. Again, I think this is a put up day for some of these first round picks on defense. This is a big time performance day. They need Rashawn Gary, LVN, Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, Eric Stokes. Those guys have to step up in this game. It's time. It's well past time for most of those guys, right? Where I'm not breaking any news here. They are going to be needed in this game. No questions asked. Eric Stokes, Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, LVN, Rashawn Gary. Those first round picks have to be not only solid, they need to be impactful in this game. This is where you earn your money. This is where you earn your status. They went and got you and spent major resources on you for a reason. Go out and show why. Go out and earn it today. Like, this is a huge game for those Packers first round picks on defense specifically. I get what you're saying about the back and forth games, but man, crushing the Cowboys in the wild card round was fun too. Yeah, even that one though is like a little bit too close at the end for comfort, where Dallas made that little run and you're like, can you just knock it off? Can we just enjoy this? This is getting a little heartburny at the end, but thankfully they were able to close that one out relatively easily at the end. No offsides, Preston. That'll be interesting. We need a loud crowd in Green Bay today. We need a very loud crowd. We need to see Detroit on a silent count, and we need to see Green Bay to be able to take advantage of that. No questions about it. I don't think I want to push back on this a little bit. I don't think Detroit is this flawless juggernaut that nobody's going to be able to stop. Green Bay beat them in their house last year. It's a very similar team. Green Bay is mega talented, mega talented. They can absolutely go out and just win this game straight up. I don't think that any one person or player has to have an A+ performance in order for Green Bay to win. I just don't, or a coach or anyone. I think everyone needs to do their 111th, take care of their responsibilities, not make mistakes, and they can win this game. That's what I want in this one. Don't be the weak link. Everyone go out and do what they're responsible for doing. And if everyone just goes out and plays a really solid game of football, everyone included, coaches, players, everyone, you're going to be in a really great spot. So don't be the weak link. Don't have that catastrophic play. Like, those are the big things. I don't think, we need to say so-and-so has to be the best version of themselves they've ever been or anything like that. I think that's where you make mistakes. If you try to do too much, just go out, play your brand of football, have a good game. Don't make those mistakes. And Green Bay will be put in a really good situation. Green Bay can easily might be the wrong word, but Green Bay can win this game. No two ways around it. However, Rashawn Gary and the D-line played against Detroit recently. I'm worried about our Luigi's Pizza player to watch. I'd have to go back and look a little bit. I did go back and watch some of the Detroit tape from last year. Rashawn Gary did have an epic performance against the Lions. I think it was last year, but I'd have to go back and look at it a little bit closer, to be honest, to see if there's been any trend there. But either way, they need to have a big game in this one. And regardless, whether it was awesome or terrible in the past, that doesn't necessarily predict what's going to happen in this one. They got to go out and perform one way or the other. Izzy, good to see you. Afternoon, Andy. I'm hoping for the win. Think we can do it. Lions will be a serious game, though. Chew their run game, deny the RPO. We will win. I like the game plan, Izzy. Do you think we see Love under center and more like the Vikings game? My hope is we see him under center. It would be pretty noteworthy if he can only do shotgun or pistol. And I honestly think that will be very limiting for Green Bay. I think the hope is that he can play under center. We're gonna have to kind of wait and see a little bit, but man, I hope he can. I think that is a big time loss if Green Bay cannot go under center in this game. Wish to get a cornerback before the trade deadline. Jaw's good, but he can't rely on him being healthy. If they want to make a push, going to need a reliable, good corner. Would not be mad at that at all. Hopefully we get the win with a minimum of injuries. That would be very nice. Ooh, we got a couple super chats in here. Sorry about that. How key is Kraft's blocking today with the offensive line shifts? I don't know that it's that much different because of the offensive line shifts. I think everyone's going to have to be, again, doing their job. I think Kraft and Ben Sims, specifically on run blocking, they're going to have to be very impactful just in general. I don't think you need to chip a ton on these defensive ends. Walker and Tom should be able to manage those pretty much one-on-one, which I think is going to give you a little bit more options in the passing game where you don't just have to chip and go into check down mode. But yeah, I think from a run blocking standpoint, I think Sims and Kraft are going to have very important games in this one. And I think if you can get to the second level, seal some of those ends. And I think that too is you could get some matchups where maybe Kraft and Sims can block some of these defensive ends one-on-one, and maybe you can get an explosive play out of it. So I'll be interested to see how they do, but either way, it's definitely important. Cheddarhead, Rain plus Jared Goff's baby size hands equals turnovers. Yeah, somebody, there was the stat I gave today. It was some fantasy site that put it out there. Let me see if I can bring it up just so I can give them credit. It was FTN Fantasy. Jared Goff has played 2 rain games since coming to Detroit. A 35-17 loss to the Packers and a 16-16 tie to the Steelers. So 33 points in 2 games combined when playing in the rain as a member of the Lions for Jared Goff. So hopefully that is something that can really help Green Bay in this one. Izzy, you are the absolute best. Thank you so much for doing that. And congratulations to the 20 people who just got brand new Pack-A-Day podcast memberships. That is awesome. Izzy, you are amazing. I know you've been a member for a while, so I'm glad you're liking it. And now 20 people get to experience what you've experienced. So that's really, really cool. What if Love struggles early, Malik clean up to win? Nah, I don't see, unless Love is just, if Love struggles because of the injury, meaning it's very clear that he's just not himself and he can't get enough on the ball and the groin is bothering him, then yeah, I think you could see Malik in that situation where they just are all right, clearly he's at 40% of his normal self and he's getting hit out there. Let's get him out of there. Let's get Malik in or whatever. But If it's just that he's not playing up to, like, he'll get every opportunity in this one and to play. And I think Jordan's going to have a good game. I think he's, he's been so much better than I think people are giving him credit for. And I think he comes out and balls out in this one. I really do. But I think if you have to go to that situation, the game's probably just over in that situation anyway. Like, Green Bay's probably down by too much. Malik Willis is not going to come in and throw you back in the game. Malik Willis is good because you can, you're balanced. You can do run or pass on any given play. You can utilize his legs. All of a sudden, you've got to go, spread formations, and it's obvious passing situations, and Malik's got to go in there. That's not the recipe that you want in this one. So, could it happen where you see him at some point? Sure, but again, that's worst case scenario in this one. John Linden, would you entertain any trades for Quay Walker? So here's what you're going to end up with in these situations, right? What team is offering something of significance for Quay Walker at this point? He is in his third year. His tape's been not good for 3 years in 2 different defenses. There's complete inconsistency there. So maybe some other team would be interested. What are they going to offer? A 6th round pick, 7th round pick, a conditional 6th or 7th round pick, a player that they want to get rid of, that they're sick of? Like, in that scenario, Green Bay just says, no, we're good. We're fine. We'll stick with our guy that we spent a 1st round pick on and hope at some point it clicks in year 3 or year 4. Like, there's not going to be a team that's going to blow Green Bay away with a trade offer for Quay Walker. And because of that, they're just going to say, we'd rather just stick with our guy that we invested a 1st round pick in, and we'll try to figure it out. We'll keep giving him opportunities, and hopefully it clicks at some point. So no, I don't see any world in which any team has that much interest in Quay that they would give anything that would even pique Green Bay's interest, because again, they'd just be more likely to keep him and hope that he clicks at some point. I just don't see any way that would happen. Izzy, think I was number 5. You thought you were number 500. That's awesome. That's really, really cool. Still want to do something for members because you guys have been so amazing lately. So we did the extra chat last week. Might need to do a Hall of Fame and All Pro chat again coming up. Maybe we'll do that on the bye week, but we'll definitely do some stuff coming up because you guys are absolutely amazing. I think we're probably closing in, or at least we're getting closer to 700 at this point, which is really, really cool. We can look it up right now. We are at 660. So we're 40 away from 700, which is really, really cool. You guys are amazing. All right, couple more, and then we will get out of here. Allison, the Packers are playing already. I said no, playing at 3 or something. I don't know what that means, Allison. They play at 3, 25 today? So yeah, we've got a ways to go till kickoff. All right. Let's see. Cooper and Gary have a day today. Sign me up. I would love for Edgerrin Cooper to have another big impact performance in this one. And we've talked about ad nauseum how important this is for Rashawn Gary to have a big game in this one. I think King would have gotten the call if they needed backup in the slot. They are thin at boundary corner instead, so you get Haddon. Yeah, I think that's the very clear and obvious one here, is they wanted the boundary cornerback. And to be fair, they've had opportunities to elevate King in other games too, and it's been Haddon and Rochelle all year long. So it seems like King is probably pretty far back on that depth chart at the moment. But yeah, it would be a little bit more if it were Bullard instead of Williams that was out, and if it were Nixon and Ballantyne that were out, then I think you get Kalen King called up in this game to give you a little bit more depth in that slot corner position. So Santino, I think this is the difficult one, right? Because, Nixon is a wild card back there. You don't know what you're going to get. He's caught balls over his head before. He had the play where he didn't catch it clean, and it ended up being the muff punt off of, I forget whose leg it was. Was it Ballantyne's leg? But he can also give you an A+ return too. But there's a little bit of chaos that's involved when Keyshawn Nixon is back there. With Jane Reed, he usually gives you the more sound decision maker and better catcher back there. We also see him subjected to some possible hits, and he's your primary wide receiver, right? So that's not ideal. And quite frankly, he just hasn't been that great as a punt returner. It's weird because he's super dynamic with the ball in his hands, but when he's returning punts, he looks very pedestrian for some reason. It doesn't make any sense to me. How can you be that dynamic with the ball in your hands anytime you get the ball on offense, but you get it as a returner and just look completely normal? It blows my mind. I don't get it at all. So I kind of agree with you. I just don't know that there's a better option, quite frankly. Brandon, would you rather have Williams and Alexander, but Malik at quarterback, or Love starting without those DBs? I'll take Love starting without those DBs. I think you're going to need to throw in this one. I think you're going to need to put up points, and I think Love gives you the better opportunity for success. No question about it. I know Malik has played well overall. Listen, this is a different game than, Indianapolis and Tennessee and Jacksonville. This is a totally different scenario. Those games you were able to stay close in. You had run pass options on pretty much every single play. Now, he's delivered super efficient, everything you could have possibly wanted. Unbelievable performances, right? This is not any knock on Malik Willis. This is the Detroit Lions, where you're going to have to throw probably 30 times a game and put up points. And that's not the game that you want Malik Willis in for. It just isn't. I love that you can, start off the game being balanced, but if, they would have a plan for him too. Again, it's a totally different type of an opponent. And I think Jordan just gives you so much better opportunity to win in this one. So I'll take Jordan in that situation. Good question, though. AI reputation on the line. This is a big one. This is obviously leaning in Detroit's favor. So AI picked Green Bay in this one. They would go to 9-0 if they got this one right, which would be pretty insane. I'm praying on AI today. It's got to be right? It has to be. They've never been wrong. How could it possibly go wrong today? It's got to be Green Bay. That'd be amazing. All right, we got to get started into this earlier. We'll ban that dude. You worried about Branch and Joseph with how many interceptions Love has thrown? I'm just worried about them in general, regardless. Like, they're two phenomenal football players that have a propensity to take the football away. So regardless of Jordan or anyone else, those are two fantastic safeties, and they're going to be on their A game. And you got to make sure that you're not putting it in harm's way when they're around, because they will find a way to tip a pass or pick it off. And you don't want to put the ball in harm's way in this one. Prince, Andre Dillard to the Texans would make sense. Their season might ride on better protection for Stroud. First of all, again, I don't know how much they had a first row view, up close and personal view of how terrible he was in Tennessee last year. I don't know that they're going to be super excited or feel like Andre Dillard can save them when it comes to pass protection. He was brutal in Tennessee last year. And again, this is one of those situations where let's even say Houston was interested in Andre Dillard. What are they going to offer? The most you're getting for Andre Dillard is like a 7th or a conditional 7th that can turn into a 6th round pick, something like that. In Green Bay, who has their own playoff aspirations, yeah, they could take the 7th, I guess. Maybe they do. They have 9 other offensive linemen, but you really don't want Travis Glover. Like, he's just basically a redshirt dude, right? Like, you don't want him in there in any capacity. So now all of a sudden you're like down to 8 offensive linemen, and you might be able to survive with that, but you also want to give yourself options in case injuries they usually can and will happen, right? So I think they're just going to say, no, we don't need the 7th round pick. We'll just keep Andre Dillard. We'll keep our depth where it is. I don't even know that teams are offering a 7th for Dillard, quite frankly. If they do, I think Green Bay says no, and nobody's going to go above and beyond that. So again, I think that's one of those that just makes sense for Green Bay to hold on to more in that scenario. All right. Ted, this is a perfect way to end it. Go Pack Go. This is a perfect way. Tad Tomato, not Sad Tomato. Why trade anybody? Go for wins. That's well said as well. We picked him up for a bag of donuts, so even a 7th to replace the one lost for Willis would be a plus. See, again, but why? You might need his depth. You can't, the thing we're finding out in Houston, right, is you can't just find depth on the streets at offensive line, specifically at offensive tackle. It doesn't exist. So you hope that you never need Andre Dillard, but man, is it a nice to have in case you ever get to that point. If he's your 8th or 9th offensive lineman, you feel pretty good about it. Now, again, you get to 8th or 9th and it's not a great world to live in, but you might need him at some point, and you don't know what injuries are going to bring. And so just to flop him for a 7th at some point, I don't see Green Bay doing that, and I don't think they'd be interested in. All right, one more super chat, then we're going to get out of here. Andy, going to my first game in Green Bay, first the Niners from the Bay Area, Niner hater. I can't wait to see Lambeau in person. Can't wait to check this off the bucket list. Go Pack Go. This effing guy that is absolutely amazing. I hope you enjoyed the absolute hell out of it. That's really, really cool. There's nothing like one of the best experiences in the world is going to Lambeau for the first time. You get to the, atrium and you get to the concourse, but walking through that tunnel for the first time, going to your seats and having Lambeau just open up. And I have chills just saying it, just seeing Lambeau open up in front of your eyes. By the way, the 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 100th, 200th time, it's still amazing, but there's nothing quite like that first one. So enjoy the hell out of that. And hope we can pick, we can see Green Bay get a win in that one for you as well. All right, everyone, enjoy game day. Like somebody said, we are just about 3 minutes until NFL Red Zone, 7 hours of commercial-free football. I'm looking forward to it. I will be back post-game show today. I think we're going to do Tyler, Nathan, and I live at 8 p.m. tonight. So we'll all be on together live for the post-game show. And then I'll do tomorrow's episode on my lonesome later in the night after I do a rewatch and start looking at some film and stuff. So look forward to that tomorrow. Appreciate you guys a ton. Thank you for all the super chats, the gifted memberships, the signed up memberships, all of it. You're the absolute best. Enjoy game day. Until next time, and especially today, go Pack Go.